There's an interesting phenomenon that happens within every human being once they really hit a certain level of maturity. They always begin to have this sense of justice, that when they've received something good, they want to somehow do something good back to the other person. Right? Have you had this experience where somebody just really did something great for you that you really, really appreciate, and you just want to do something nice for them, do something good for them that would be helpful for them, or just say thank you, right? Have you guys had this experience where perhaps you didn't need to, they just did it out of, an act of love for you, or simply because that's what they do, but this happens to you, and you just desire to give back to them? Do you guys get this, right? This is something that happens among people who are adults. They're mature people. Little kids, what happens? You give them something nice and they're like, yeah, I got something nice, and they run off and they keep playing. Right? And so it's a sign of actual maturity within the human being that there's this kind of deep sense of justice, that we automatically just do what is just. When we receive something good, we give back something good. And so this can be applied across all sorts of things, but we kind of run into a problem when we get to God. God is the source of all good things, right? Both the natural good things and the supernatural. But how do you do something helpful to God? How do you do something good to the source of all goodness? How do you make God happy when he's perfectly happy in and of himself? It's this kind of problem that a mature human being has. How do I do this right? This issue is what the ancient Greek philosophers called the virtue of religion. So they called it, first off, this was the Greek philosophers. This was not a Christian thing at all. The Greek philosophers understood that we as human beings should, out of justice to God, because of what God has done and what he is, give religion, specifically worship, to God. So to just kind of clarify some things in your mind, people will throw around this word religion, but I think it's misused very often. Religion requires two things to be a true religion. Right? First off, you have to believe that God exists. So some people will be like, oh, what religion are you? I'm Buddhist. Well, Buddhism doesn't believe in God. And so it's a system of beliefs. It perhaps helps you to be a better person, but it's not actually a religion, because you have to believe in God for it to be a religion. Another thing is that religion includes worship. It recognizes there is a God, and I, as a human being, owe something back to God. And so if you've heard of the fancy term for it is deism, or this sense that God exists, he created the universe, but really we don't owe anything to him. There's no relationship that we have with God. That's not technically a religion either. It's a system of beliefs, but it's not a religion. So the Greeks said, no, we can look at the natural world around us. We can see that it is ordered, that things don't just spring into existence out of nothing, and that it all more or less works towards the good. And so there must be some sort of a creator that created all things, that's intelligent because it ordered all things, and that is good because it ordered it in such a way that it's pretty good. And if that's the case, we owe worship to this God, and that's the virtue of religion. So I've been talking a lot about the ancient philosophers and things of the sort. We see this in play today when we talk to people who say, oh yeah, I'm spiritual but not religious, or I believe that God exists, but I don't really go to church. Or even something that we see very often is, Parents who were very faithful always brought their kids to church, and then their kids go off to college or whatever it is, and they don't really stop believing necessarily, but they just stop practicing their faith. What's going on right there is at the heart of this virtue of religion. So, you see, if we don't really believe the two necessary parts of religion, if we don't think that both of those are the point of what we're doing here, then it doesn't make sense to come to church. Or you can very easily be scandalized by the fact that there are a bunch of sinners, both in the sanctuary and in the pews. So let's go into this one more time. First off, religion believes that there is a God. This God is the source of all good things. And remember, when we think about creation, it's not just that God created everything that is good at the beginning of time. We as Catholics, we believe that part of creation, of God's act of creation, is maintaining everything in existence throughout time. So if God's creation was just at the beginning and he let everything kind of get rolling and then stepped away, that's essentially deism, then really all we need to do to be just towards God is he created us at one time, I'm going to go to church one time. I'll say thanks, and that's it. But that's not what we believe. You see, we believe that we need to keep coming back to worship God. Keep coming back to give him thanks. Because he keeps maintaining us in existence. He keeps giving us good things, day in and day out, moment by moment. That's why we keep showing up here. And so if we think of God as this being that created us a long time ago and saved us not quite so long ago, but still a long time ago, and that was a one-time event for creation and a one-time event for salvation, it actually makes no sense that we're all here more than one time in our life. Next, the second part of religion is that it's worship of God. What has happened in our kind of consumer culture in the United States, and really it's been spread across the world by MTV, essentially, the United States culture has kind of pushed itself across the world, is that religious services have become this thing that we think of like a consumer product. Of, oh, you know, I like music like this, so I want the music to be like this. I want my priest to preach like this, and so it has to be like that. Or you'll hear it often where people say, yeah, you know, I go to church, or I went to church, but I feel like I just didn't get anything out of it. Well, if we really understand that what we are doing here is religion, we're not here actually to get anything out of it. We're here to put something into it. We're here to worship. We are rendering to God what is owed to him. We've already gotten everything out of it. He's maintained us in existence all week long. He's continued to pour his grace upon us all week long. And so what we do here is not about what I can get from church. It's about what I can give to God. I'm hoping in a lot of minds right now, there's this is almost hard to hear. This is rocking. It flips it all around. You see, if you go to almost any other church out there, the whole experience is about entertainment. They'll even refer to the sanctuary as the stage. There's music, there's light shows, there's smoke machines. There are people who have been preparing their talks for weeks. Now, I'm not saying that perhaps we couldn't improve the quality of homilies. I'm not saying that perhaps we shouldn't always be striving to be excellent in our music and in everything that we do. And I'm not saying that it's not a good thing to get something out of church. What I'm saying is that we come to church to give back to God the worship that we owe to Him. And that's when we fulfill the virtue of religion, which is a part of justice. So actually, what we receive, what we should desire to receive the most when we come to church, is to become a better human being. Not because of what we hear, not because of how we feel, but by the very fact of coming to church. We're actually making ourselves more virtuous. We're exercising the virtue of justice. And what's fascinating is within the human being, whenever we do exercise the virtues, whenever we do virtuous things, we actually just become happier because we were made for virtue. And so the ironic thing happens that when we begin to come to church not to make ourselves happy, but to make God happy, we in fact are actually made happy by coming to church. It's like this Jedi mind switch thing that God does to us. And so, with this homily, I don't really want to ask any of you to do anything differently than you already are. You're at church, right? I'm literally preaching to the choir. But rather to think about church and to talk about church in a different way. We've seen the effects in the younger generations of having this mentality that church is about me. When church is about me, if it doesn't make me feel nice, then there's no point in coming. But that's not the point in church. So make that shift. Teach this shift. Speak in a way so that we understand religion to be really about God. And when we put God at the center, everything else just works itself out.